Our topic today is the distributive property. This is a review. You might see some different ways of it being put into play, but this is going to come back in everything we do throughout the school year. So before we can start, we have to understand an area model. That's kind of what the distributive property is. So we know area of a rectangle is length times width, right? Well, if I have a width of 2, okay, and a length of x, I don't know what this one is for my smaller square, okay, but of my larger one, it's 8. Well, think of what makes up that whole top line. You're right, it's both x and 8. So to find the area of this, I could say that it would be 2 times x plus 8. So when we look at this, this is a different way now, because we're going to come into plays where we have to add to a figure already and we don't know how much. So when we do this, we would distribute. When we distribute in math, distribute means to multiply. I am giving this to both things inside, so that I would have 2x, or 2 times x, plus 2 times 8. And that's 2x plus 16. So we've done this. We have been doing this since 6th grade with the distributive property. And if you look here, we have all these different examples, okay? You can have it where you multiply your term outside first through addition. You could have it through subtraction. But then sometimes our parentheses will come first, just like our area model example. And I kind of have to distribute backward, which is what a lot of you refer to it as. But what you have to keep in mind is what's outside the parentheses that gets multiplied by everything inside the parentheses. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So if I had to multiply these, I'd first distribute 3 times x and 3 times 8. So I would get 3 times x plus 3 times 8, which is simply 3x plus 24. Now I'd have to do -7. Notice what's outside is a negative, and I'm multiplying that by both. Now, what you're multiplying here is -7 times -4. So -7 times 5b is -35b, and -7 times -4 gives me a positive 28. So let's take a minute, pause, and I want you to try these on your own. Okay, let's see how you did. So here I'm going to distribute my 5 to both things. So 5 times x plus 5 times 7 will give me 5x plus 35. Did you guys get that? Good. Now if I come over here, I have 12 times 3, which is, and then I have 12 times -1/6x. So it's in your best idea just to write that, okay? Just write it out and you can go to the side to do the math if you need to. But you'd get 36 minus 2x. That is because 12 times 1/6 is 2. So I'm going to preface this, get used to being uncomfortable with fractions. I know a lot of you have this uncomfort when you see a fraction, but fractions are going to be in everything we do in algebra. So we need to get comfortable with it versus freaking out when we see one. Okay, let's see how you did on this one. I'd have to distribute 3 times 0.4. Then I do 3 times 1.1d. So a lot of people ask, and I'm just going to pause for a second, what is the work that I show for distributive property? this is it right here. Those little swoop arrows, that's your work. If you show that, this second line here, you don't necessarily have to show, but it's going to help you stay organized. Because then I can do 3 times 0.4, 3 times 1.1 to get 1.2 plus 3.3D. Make sure your variables are staying put. And I can't combine these from our last couple videos because they're not like terms. Okay, so let's see how you did number 4. If I distribute a negative y to the 2y, that gives me, okay, and then the negative y to the negative 1. So I should have negative 2y squared plus y. Okay, if you have a question, feel free to make a comment in the video. So this is important to understand. We're going to see this within a problem. There is a 1 in front of that parentheses. So you can think of this as distributing a negative 1, if that helps. But when there is a negative outside the parentheses and nothing else in between them, I need to distribute it to everything inside. So my first one, okay, I'm going to be distributing it to the x. And then I'm also giving that negative to the 6y. It has to go to everything inside. Okay, so I think it makes more sense to all of your brains to multiply by a negative 1. Do you see how I change this? It's no longer an addition because I'm doing a negative 1. So that my final answer is negative x minus 6y. The biggest mistake that gets made with distributive property is students distribute, but they only give it to one of the terms inside. They don't give it to both. Okay, let's come over here. So when I distribute the negative 1, I'm giving it to everything on that inside. So I give it to the 5x, and I also give it to the negative 8. You have to understand, minus means negative. Negative means minus. If you see subtraction, the number behind it is negative. And just kind of commit that to your memory. It's going to help you in everything this year. So we should end up with negative 5x plus 8. Okay, you know what time it is. It's your turn. Pause this video and attempt these two on your own. Okay, let's see how you did. So I'm going to distribute this negative 1 to my negative x and to my negative 31. So your work should look something like this. Okay, if you don't have that, pause, write it down, help yourself out. Remember, the more detailed your notes, the better you're going to be on an assessment. So you should have x plus 31. It's okay if you got it wrong. In fact, I wouldn't erase it. I just kind of put a line through it saying you were wrong and write the correct answer so that you can see your mistakes or what you struggled on. Then again, we're going to have my negative 1 here that has to go to my 6m. Okay, and when I give it, I'm multiplying. And then when I give it to my negative 9, I'm still multiplying. Think, when a teacher says distribute these papers to the class, you're giving one to every single person. So when you distribute something, it has to go to every single term inside. So my final answer should have been negative 6m plus 9n. How'd you guys do? Okay, so we have something a little different here. We've been doing our distributive property with one number outside the parentheses. Well, if we look, now I have a binomial times a binomial. So there are two ways that we can solve this. And I want you to practice both ways at first. Now, when I was in school, I only used this first method, and we called it FOIL. So it's going to come back into play later as FOIL. But for now, think of it as a double distributive, meaning, and I'm going to distribute my 2x to my 3x. And I'm going to write down what that would be multiplying. But I also have to give that 2x to the negative 7. Remember, it had to go to both things. So again, I write that multiplication down. Remember, there's something else in this first parentheses, so there's also a 4. So I have to multiply the 4 times everything in the second. So 4 times 3x and 4 times negative 7. It is in your best interest to write these down as you do it. So if you can multiply them in your head, that's fine. But if not, write them down the way I did. You can use colored pencils, no problem. Then what you're going to do is you're going to go through and multiply. 2x times 3x, 2x times negative 7, 4 times 3x, and 4 times negative 7. Okay? Now, I'm not done. And the reason is I have right here in the middle like terms. So if I combine those like terms, I end up with 6x squared minus 2x minus 28. That now is my final answer. My preference is this method. This method is something I've been doing since I was in middle school. But there is another method called a model method or a table. So if you see them say use a model, okay, now you might have to complete the model, so you do have to understand this method. What we're going to do is we're going to take our first term. Our first binomial is x minus 3, and I'm going to break it apart. This is kind of my area model from the beginning. Except instead of 1 row, I now have 2. So what comes on the side here would be 4x, and it's a negative 5. What you're doing is you're multiplying your length and your width in each box. What does that mean? Well, I'd have 4x times x. I'm matching what's on the top. Then I'd have negative 5 times x, because if I look, I'm doing this negative 5 and the x in this column. I then go over here, I have 4x times negative 3. I have shifted columns now. And then I'm in this row, and that's negative 5 times negative 3. Okay, when we go through, 4x times x, 4x squared. Negative 5 times x, negative 5x. 4x times negative 3 is negative 12x. And negative 5 times negative 3 is 15. Look what I have here. I have like terms in the middle. That is how I got that 17x. Okay, they were both negative. So in this problem, it's a little longer. You now have what I call viewer's choice. Me, I would do both methods, and it would help you check. So pause the video now and complete this problem. Okay, let's see how you did. If we chose our first method, I'm going to have 5x times 2x, 5x times 1, negative 3 times 2x, and negative 3 times 1. With me? So when I go through and do my multiplication, I have 10x squared plus 5x minus 6x minus 3. In the middle are my like terms. A positive 5 and a negative 6 leave me with a negative x. Okay, those that did the box method. When we set it up, we're going to have 5x. Make sure you're writing the negative. If your binomial is subtraction, that negative needs to go with the term behind it. And then I set my other binomial up here. Now I'm going to give you advice. It doesn't matter which binomial goes where. You're still going to end up with your same answer. So in my first box, I have 5x times 2x 5x times 1. I move over here, I have negative 3 times 2x and negative 3 times 1. So when I go through, now most people get this box, it's what we do after it. Well, after it, actually multiply. What is 5x times 2x? Okay, that's 10x squared. 5x times 1 is plus 5x. Negative 3 times 2x is negative 6x. And negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. When I go and combine those like terms in the middle, it still ends up with my same answer as my, it's FOIL really, but they call it the distributive property. So Miss Nell and I, we don't care which method you use. We just care that you get to the end result. A recommendation at this point in the year is try both. Do one and then do the other to check your work. If you don't get the same answer, something went wrong, okay? So if you have not done so already, subscribe or comment. If you have any questions on the topic, you'll get new content. There's some pre-algebra content for those that skip pre-algebra. It would benefit you to watch some of those. But most important, always take time to reflect and summarize at the end of your notes, because we do look at that.